Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the time to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneur. Welcome to Never Been Promoted here. We're going live today. We're going to be bringing a little awareness to World Cerebral Palsy Day this Sunday, October 6th. And to join me today is Vincent Catanzaro. He is a father of a son with cerebral palsy, and he is an entrepreneur. And he has found a great amount of success with a bunch of challenges in life and things like that, but also just from a great base of faith, family, and mindset. I appreciate anyone who's joined today. And if you've been here before, our mission is to help you get better at entrepreneurship. And it goes beyond, just maybe, as we always talk about cutting ties to things. Sometimes it's not just marketing or it's not just sales. Sometimes it's kind of like things in your life that are a little more core, like your family, your faith, the things, how you look at problems or challenges in your life or things that come along for the ride. So, this is going to be a great conversation. Vince is a great guy. And the last thing before we meet Vince is the one shameless plug I do is ask you to go to youtube.com and subscribe at Never Been Promoted. But let's bring on Vince. Vince is coming back. Vince, a multi participant on the Never Been Promoted show. Vince, how are you doing?
Great. Well, that introduction was so cool. The whole introduction to the show.
Right. That marketing team and Instantly Relevant. I don't know if you guys who you use for your marketing out there, but I would use them. I mean, they're amazing. Completely not self-serving statement at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was great. Well, thank you for having me and let me have this opportunity to talk about my journey, my family, and kind of how it ties into this Sunday is World Cerebral Palsy Day, and was thought what a good opportunity to have a conversation around a subject that people don't talk about much.
Right. Well, and I think, thanks for coming, by the way, too. And you have an incredible story. I'm not going to get all the stories of your life for sure. But I think like a lot of things, you don't have awareness in things until it's kind of in your life or near it. I wouldn't have known this without knowing you for sure. So in cerebral palsy is all over the place. I mean, it's not like it's a one event out of nowhere. Like it's all around, but unless you're aware of it and know what you can do or how to support or how to make your life better, if you're in that, the situation where you're struggling with a family member or something like that, you just don't know. So we thought you and I were catching up last week. We're like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's hear your story. But do you want to just do a brief introduction of you and just, we'll get back and we'll get into your story of journey a little bit of who you are. So
sure.
Give us a Vince pinch.
Yeah. So Vincent Catanzaro, I'm a partner in Renee Vincent Executive Placement. My wife and I have a retained search executive placement business that we're 4.5 years into. It's going very well. I'm a father of 6 children, and I'm originally from New York City and have lived in Southeast United States, I think, for the majority of my life now, although I still relate as a New Yorker.
Yeah. We don't live too far from each other, and I'm not from here either, but I will probably not be from Atlanta at any point. I got down here 43 years old or so. Is that right? 43? No, 39, 40, a while ago. And I just think it's too far along at this point. I think at this point, I'm from St. Louis, but I live in Atlanta. I can never. You're pretty much from here now in Atlanta.
Well, I don't know. I got here when I was 22, 23.
Ooh, so. It's tough. You're on the border. You're not very old. So you found a lot of success now, and I think setting up your journey a little bit here of you have 6 children and why don't you just take over here? Talk about your journey and specifically where, just set up your family and your dynamics a bit, just so we can get an understanding of where.
I thought I would tell you, you mentioned something like, you don't really know about cerebral palsy until it kind of comes at you. And I remember when I first heard it, I had no idea what it meant. And at that point, it was in my life. So, my wife and I, we met, while I was in college, and we got married right out of graduating, and have been married, coming on our 32nd anniversary, and together, 37 years. And so we were married, and Renee was expecting, and there was, they do those early tests when you're having a baby, and there was something wrong with like one of her levels of protein, or something was off, right? And so they talked to us, and we went down to the gynecologist and had a meeting, and they're like, hey, this could be something, could be nothing, could be a twin that was lost and absorbed by the other baby. um just kind of like letting us know. And you know oddly, we never really had a conversation, right, about whether we're going to move forward with the pregnancy or not. But we had this weird phone call from the doctor's office, like, hey, if you're not going to have the baby, you need to decide that now, because you're getting too far along. And it was kind of shocking to us, because we never really considered that. But decided that, no, of course we're going to move forward with this pregnancy. And we had some, other warning signs that things were wrong, but we didn't know, right? Because we were young. It's our first pregnancy, and that's supposed to feel good when you're pregnant. We were up in Massachusetts, and we did the Freedom Walk. While Renee was probably, you know, in her late teen weeks of being pregnant, 18, 19 weeks. And she wasn't feeling good after that. But we just figured, like, hey, we did a bunch of walking today, that probably makes sense. And then we did that, I guess it's Lamaze class. We did the weekend version of Lamaze class, and it was on a Saturday. And I guess at this point, Renee was 29 weeks pregnant. And we came home on Saturday evening, and we're like going to bed. And I was like, I think you have a lot of signs of premature labor, as they describe the symptoms of premature labor to us. And she's like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, what do you think we should do? I was like, I think first thing Monday morning, you got to call your doctor, right? First thing. So, of course, Sunday morning, early, her water broke, 29 weeks. So we, rushed to the hospital. I actually wasn't even home. I was actually traveling for business, via car. So I'm rushing to the hospital to meet her there. And they were able to hold off labor for like 19, basically I can labor for like 19 days. And, when Victor was born and delivered, everything looked great. 32 weeks. It was pretty big for that digestive period. And his Apgar scores were really good, and like all good news. And they wished him away to the neonatal unit, and I ran out and I got a picture of him framed from like being firstborn, so that I could bring that back to Renee and come back. And they're like, hey, your son's had I brought a liquid. This is how you're supposed to avoid crying when you tell these stories. So
I don't think we've had anyone ever cry on the show, so
I may be the first. So
listen, but I think that's real, because you just got news, your firstborn.
Yeah. So like, hey, he's had a pulmonary hemorrhage. There's been a setback. That goes to, an hour later, he's not responding to the medicine. I guess they give like surfactant is what they give for the lungs for the pulmonary hemorrhage, and he's not responding. Next hour, it's like they bring us a document that's like 2 inches thick to use experimental medication to perform life-saving procedures, and we're basically signing off like we're not suing anybody, whatever. And they give him this experimental medication, which I think today, I forget what it's called, but I think today is, part of the regular procedure of these type situations. And he bounces back, right? And for a few days, but then he has a second pulmonary hemorrhage. And then they like had to basically paralyze him and knock him out with this really invasive ventilator. And And he starts to come back from that. So it's like a 6-week journey of, is he going to die?
How
Is
was
he
you
going
guys
to make
handling
it?
it that way too? Like, how was you?
Dude, I don't even know. It's like a blur, right? And we named him Victor because he was victorious through that difficult time, right? And so so the so it's like this blur of 6 months of being in the NICU unit, 6 weeks. I don't know if I had to say. So finally, he comes home, and but he's still struggling. He has like failure to thrive, and in the hospital they introduced like this digestive yeast infection in him, and so he's not eating right, and this goes on for months, and we're doing all these different things to try to get him to eat, and they're going to do a J tube, which is like a tube into his intestines to get nutrition in him because he's not taking nutrition. And his nutrition is like, hey, none of these things are working. Why don't you try giving him this? I think it's called diflucan, which is like what women take if they have like a yeast infection. So we give him this diflucan, and boom, clears him right up. Starts eating like a champ, right? And I remember thinking, here it is, 5 months into this journey, I'm finally going to have a healthy baby. It's like weekly doctors, way more than weekly doctors visits, right? And this kind of finally it's coming together. But at this point, we also had scheduled like a neurology appointment. And, it's probably like a week after I'm thinking I finally have a healthy kid that we meet with this neurologist who throws out this term cerebral palsy that I'm not familiar with, which is really kind of a catch-all term of brain injury, right? And so like in my son's case, he's missing white matter that kind of takes the electrical signal from your brain to your spinal cord to get your body to do the things it wants to do. And so that's when it first entered my life. And I remember talking to my mom at the time, and I was like, I have a whole new motto in life, right? Which is like, no matter how hard you think it is today, just get ready because it's getting harder. Because that's just what it seemed like, man. It was just like the hits just kept on coming. And it took a while to start to understand, get him into early intervention, kind of get that process going. And, financially, this was devastating to us. And, special needs daycare organized, just like, I mean, our world was really turned upside down. And
Are there a lot of resources available to you for these things to help or ease
yeah,
that burden?
yes, there are a lot of resources. And there's an organization in Atlanta called Focus, and it's kind of a not-for-profit that ties into all the children's hospitals and provides resources and education and all sorts of things like that. But wasn't great. Like, so we were living at the time in Roswell, and like, Renee needed to we needed to go into money making mode. Like, we were way underwater. And
What do you do there if you have a child that if you didn't have is not covered by this? The reason I ask this is because the financial devastation, entrepreneurs are not like, I mean, to me, that's insane that you have to know that you're gonna like, oh my gosh, we have to go to the money making mode. Like when I say like resources, this isn't covered by insurance. Like this, like what
a
happened?
lot of it
I don't
is.
think I have that
I
perspective. I
had
mean,
I had big company insurance, but like it's just the incidentals. It's the and Renee not being able to work and having the sick kid, and it really just turned our whole
I mean,
system
yeah,
way upside down. And so it was really hard. The first couple of years, man, were really hard. And I was really, I guess from like a faith perspective, it was I was pretty pissed at God. And I guess that's better than not believing, I would say. But I was like, you know, what did he do to deserve this? Like, what did we do? Like, we did it right. We did the pregnancy right. Like, we did things the right way, right? We didn't take foolish risk with the pregnancy. We didn't. She didn't drink, doesn't smoke, right? There, it's just like didn't eat things she wasn't supposed to eat. Like the whole thing, just like why? why did this happen? And I mean, it took a long time. And I remember there was we were attending an Episcopal church, and you know, we had this old Irish priest at this church. And I just remember one Sunday he said something along the lines of, "Hey, think about something that's been on your mind, that's been hurting you," and uh, and then we went into the forgiveness of sins prayer. And I just remember thinking, man, I was so angry. I was so angry with doctors. I was so angry with myself, right? Because I felt like, hey, man, like I'm dad, right? This is my responsibility. We were at the hospital on Saturday taking a Lamaze class, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, hey, Renee's got signs of premature labor. We were literally at the hospital. Like, why didn't I say something and just go check us into the hospital right then? Like, like, what a failure on my part. Like, what a
Do you still
really.
struggle with that?
No, I don't. But the remembrance of the emotions behind it, like it was, I was really hurting. It was deep, right? And no one wants to feel like they fail, especially at being a husband and being a father, right? And it was and I just remember at that moment I gave that away. It took a while to see, right? Like people will say stuff like God doesn't give you things you can't handle, right? Like which really means that we can handle anything that we're facing here on planet Earth, right? That's we are designed to overcome. But like when you're in it, like
You don't see that. No.
man, you're not seeing that kind of stuff. And so the the therapies, right? Speech, vision, occupational, physical therapy, all those things that you go surgeries, man, like, I'm not even sure if all the surgeries we should have done, or like you're so engrossed in this community of doctors. And I mean, it was a long journey, and it took a while. It took several years before we were like brave enough. I mentioned in the top of the show we have 6 children, and to brave enough to kind of go down the path of having another child, and we did. And we, 4 years after Victor, our daughter Juliet was born, and 2 years after Juliet, Isabel was born, and 2 years after Isabel, Sophia was born, and 5 years after Sophia, we adopted older twin girls from Russia. But with all those pregnancies of his sisters, those 3 pregnancies, they were all difficult pregnancies. They were all, bed rests, cerclages, we, for whatever reason, pregnancies weren't easy for Renee, and came with complications. And so it was quite a sacrifice to continue to have those children physically on her, right? To they basically are cerclages. They basically sew your cervix closed, right, to prevent premature labor. So it was a really tough journey, but somewhere along the line of going from this like really, really difficult situation to coming out the other side. There's a I think a woman that worked for Sesame Street wrote a poem called Holland, and it was about, I think, children with autism was what it was really written about. And but the gist of the poem, and it was very meaningful to me. The gist of the poem was like, hey, you're a couple and you're planning the trip of your lifetime to Italy. And all your friends have been going to Italy, and you always want to go to Italy, and you're going to go see the Mike, going to go see David and Michelangelo's work, and you're going to go to Venice, and you have this whole trip planned to go to Italy. And you board the plane, and when this whole lifetime trip you saved up for, when the plane lands, they're like, welcome to Holland. And you're like, Holland? What am I doing in Holland? This is not where I want to be. This is not where I plan to go. But you find out that Holland's a beautiful place too. And it's got tulips and windmills, and right, and there's all this beauty in Holland, right? Just not where you expected to go. And that hits home, because it's stuff like, hey, I'm not going to play catch with my kid. I'm not going to teach my son how to throw a ball, or how to run with a football, or right, do these types of athletic things. I remember when he was very young, and thinking to myself, I may never have a conversation with my son, right? And I know for many families, they have nonverbal children, right? And it's difficult. And I remember thinking, even when we were in like the special needs community, thinking, oh man, Victor is the sickest of all these kids. He's got the most challenges of all these kids. And he's a spastic quadriplegic, which means that in his legs and arms, they're very tight and have a lot of spasticity in it. And his trunk is very low tone, doesn't have seating balance, right? Can't sit without support, can't eat without support, can't, bathe without support, right? So, but the blessing is he certainly can talk and communicate and share his needs, and has no problem telling you, like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom, or I'm hungry and I want pizza, not a hamburger, right?
I've heard
So
him ask you, when am I going to get a job?
yeah,
I'm ready to work.
yeah, he's fully
He
socially.
said, I want to get a job this summer.
Yeah, so
You're like,
so now it's like he never, like, my fear was I'll never speak to him, and now it's like, now he never stops talking. So so prayer answered, right? So but just kind of going through that, and starting to understand, okay, like, this is a beautiful place that I'm at, and this is a beautiful life. And when you really start digging in to how the world works, and how like human beings here on planet Earth work, and build some understanding and knowledge and wisdom in that, you learn certain things, like like kind of the story of Helen Keller and what she was able to accomplish, right? There's, and you have to believe this, and there's probably people in your audience who may not necessarily be here from a spiritual perspective, but if you believe that we're spiritual beings, that there's a spirit living inside of us, as I do, right? um what I've learned is that Victor's spirit is full, right? They're just as creative and powerful as mine or any other person's spirit. And through that spirit, he's able to live in his body. It's almost like an earth suit, almost like a car, right? It's almost like his car doesn't get out of first gear, right? And the transmission is broken, but it goes in first gear. And once you adapt to that and learn that and maintain the car best you can, just knowing that this doesn't get in first gear, you can still have a beautiful existence, right? And so having, although his suit, his earth suit, right, he has brain damage, right? He's missing white matter in his brain. That's not something that we can surgically go in and add back, right? That's just that's not fixing itself. But he lives a full life, and we live a full life, and we live a life of, just like any other family, full of ups and downs, but a life full of joy. And I think through this, right, it somewhere transitions from, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, to really that truly God only gives you gifts, right? If it's coming from God,
Well,
it's a
part of
thing
that's
of
a
beauty.
mindset, right? And that's how you take those gifts.
Yeah,
I
it's
have to ask
yeah,
you,
it's
was your faith challenged at times? You were like, I'm not sure I believe any of this. Like, did you
mm,
have some days you're like,
I don't
I'm
know if I
throwing the
had
talent away.
enough.
I'm throwing the talent on my faith.
Yeah, I don't know if I had enough understanding, right? I I think at the core, I believed in God, right? Because I was mad at God, right? It wasn't like God doesn't exist, this is whatever, right? But I really didn't have a great understanding of faith. I still am on my faith journey, but certainly, these last 10 years more understand more than I did. And Victor's about to turn 29, so he went through almost 20 years with me with very little understanding of faith. And so the but you start to realize, oh my God, he's a gift, and he's a gift to all of us. He's a gift to the family. And I think, there's probably within certainly my wife has her testimony when it comes to Victor, but I think all of his sisters also have a certain testimony, because it's led to different things in their lives and different understandings. I can't speak for them. I know that they all very deeply love Victor, but yeah,
You generally
certainly.
don't want to speak for your wife, and not yours, but any wife. You want them, let them do their own speaking. Just good marital advice here. Let them, don't speak for
You can
them.
speak on my behalf, and I'll just
Right. This is not a two-way street. This is certainly a one-way downhill street for all
exactly,
men. Just life lesson there. Let them speak for you. Don't speak for them. Okay.
exactly. So
Excellent.
so that's really, when I saw that, and this is the first time I've ever really acknowledged World Cerebral Palsy Day, but when I saw that there was a day acknowledging, um, people all over the world with cerebral palsy, and they're, cerebral palsy could be like, if you ever see someone that has a unusual gait when they're walking, or maybe one of their arms is kind of, you know, twisted like this a little bit, and or they hold it close, one arm they hold close to their body, and that all could be a form of a cerebral palsy, which is kind of like, hey, there's a brain injury associated there. So there's millions and millions of people on Earth with cerebral palsy, living lives out there, and I think that going through that challenge and coming coming through the challenge, right, has really positioned the family to just be much stronger, you know, maybe a little bit more grounded in faith, grounded in understanding, uh, understanding that everyone's different,
Yeah.
right? All my kids have challenges, right? They're all challenging in their own different ways. Um, but like if there was like a bell curve, right? Like of, the physiology, the physical, right? Like, Thomas, you'd be way up at the top of the bell curve, right? But like, the rest of us, we all start fading out. And then people with cerebral palsy, right? They're the outliers. They're where the line gets real thin on the outside of that bell curve. And from a physical perspective, right? But
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing. Like we talk about traveling. Traveling with Victor is hard, right? If we want to go to Europe, we go to an older city. Man, it's really difficult to
I mean,
navigate.
to get there and then navigate around there to get to any location, and special transportation, and hotels that may not accommodate that, and uh, wheelchair, and like yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
can't
elevators. A
even
lot of
imagine.
elevators are small in Europe, right?
Right.
You get into a lift, and it's like, man, like if I had Victor with me, he wouldn't even fit in this thing, right?
Right.
So,
Or only one of you fits. Like, I'll see you on 12.
so see
Just
you later.
hang out. Hit that. What? It's gonna be okay. It's gonna
Yeah.
be okay. What
So
you just okay, so translate this to how you've taken this into the rest of your life. So you have a lifetime of just challenges. You've added more kids. That we won't go down all the other things in life that's there, but how do you translate that into to work and business? Like, how do you leverage your personal life's challenges, overcomings, accomplishments, the faith that drives you? How does that come over to your business life?
I think really from the challenge perspective, it's like, what challenge can I get from work that would be more complicated or more challenging than the challenge we've already worked through, right? Like the ability to work through something like a special needs baby, right? And I think that gives you a level of confidence that like, well, like whatever is going on, like we can figure it out, right? And I think that's really, the I think early that was the confidence that came with it, right? Like, you know, especially when I was not an entrepreneur and I was working for someone, and I was thinking to myself, there's nothing that this company, this manager, this whatever could do to me that would ever be as challenging of what I know I can manage through, right? Because I've managed through something much more difficult than having to find a new job or navigate a bad boss or whatever, right?
Right.
So I think that was kind of the initial piece of it. I think as I've grown and gained understanding is that what I've come to realize is that you know hope is hope leads to faith, faith leads to grace, and that always works, right? That doesn't like work sometimes. Like, you know, hope, love, hope, faith, grace, right? That
Mhm.
that chain, that connection there always works. And so I joke about it, right? So we're in this like weird generation. Generation X is the generation of, or Generation Z is the generation of how do you identify, right? And so I partially joke that I identify as a Jedi, right? That's what I am, and the
Good Jedi.
and I'm a Jedi, right?
Is Renee
And
on the dark side? Would she be like a Sith?
she's Princess Leia.
I'm just
The
seeing if I can get her to jump on camera out of nowhere and punch you. That's all I'm looking for on that right now. Like,
the
look, I
but
said the wrong thing. I'm jumping in there.
or maybe Princess Vespa if you know Spaceballs.
Ooh, that's good.
The
She's a druid
she's
princess,
a druid, yeah, a druidia princess, yes.
druidia. I love it.
The but I joke about it as because the force would be like the Holy Spirit and my lightsaber would be the word of God and being connected and like Jedis are confident and Jedis are connected and Jedis are fearless, right? And I try to live a life of being fearless, being connected to my source, right? And remembering that and not taking the bait, right? Like I still catch myself taking the bait. Like don't take the bait on things that you shouldn't be taking the bait on, right? Don't let the devil troll you. Don't let, you know, thoughts get in your way. I'll give you a perfect example. We were my father-in-law just recently passed away. My mother-in-law passed away about 18 months ago, and we're getting older, and we're starting to think about retirement. And so we've gone to meet some financial planners, and starting to talk about how do we retire? What's that going to look like? Blah 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 blah. Right? And and I meet with a Bible coach, and so I was meeting with my Bible coach, and I'm sharing this conversation with him, and he's like, "Well, what would be successful for you? Like, you know, what does that look like?" And I was like, well, we want to be able to travel. We want to be able to cover our bills. We want to leave money for our kids. We want to, and I laid out this level of what I'm hoping retirement looks like. Right. And so after about an hour of me laying out the story and him just kind of quizzing me on it, he's like, well, let me ask you a question. Like, if you had money in the stock market to give you a return. Yeah. Is that, is that guaranteed? Do you know if that's going to be there? I was like, well, no. It's like in this investment that you made in this business that, is going to give you a dividend. Is that 100% guaranteed that, it's going to be there? And I was like, no. And Social Security, is your Social Security guaranteed? Is that going to be there? And I was like, well, no. And so, we kind of went down this path. He's like, you never mentioned this in your success of gaining more wisdom in God's word. And it's like, I totally, and I've been studying, faith for, you know, actively for 5 years, Bible study 15 years, and been a Christian, my whole life, right? And I felt like, oh my gosh, I totally took the bait, right? Like I just totally got sucked in by these financial conversations and started worrying about my finances and started worrying about like, how are we going to do it? How we're going to piece it together? And this was losing the fact that knowing that if I'm connected to God and I'm living in God's kingdom, I'm living as a representative in God's kingdom, all that's taken care of. And it's not like God doesn't know I need money to pay my mortgage and do things, right? I'm not saying don't give Vince a call for business, because we're open for business, right? But really the truth of it is that that's secure, right? I'm secure and confident, right? If I'm really a Jedi and I'm confident, right, I'm secured with that. And so I think that's where it's kind of grown to, is that understanding, not that I can overcome the challenge, right? You know, it, I really wish,
You have to accept the challenge. Like, I think the idea to overcome
like,
something
accepting the gift, right? That's what
right.
I would say.
Well,
It's like,
it's exactly. So I think as you described it, overcoming a challenge assumes it's in the past and you can move forward. Yours is a continuous gift, as you describe, right? That most people outside of that lens would not look at it probably as a gift. Like, oh my gosh, that would be such a challenge. But you're looking at it in the lens of what a continuous gift I get to live.
right. And just accepting that gift. Like I wish, God, my life would have been so much easier if I had the maturity and understanding back when I was 27 years old and Victor was showing up to say, what a gift I've just been given. What an opportunity I've just been given. Right. And it took a long time for me to gain that understanding.
I mean, if you had that wisdom at 20s, it'd be almost, I think one of the coolest inventions we could ever give is just transferring wisdom between generations. As a race and humans, we would be so far along if that was possible.
I know, it's crazy.
Like if 5-6-year-old had the wisdom of 40-year-old, they'd also be like, seriously, I'm never going to use this geography thing or math thing in middle school ever. You'd have to accept it. Like, they're wise. Anyway, the point being is, as a race of humans, as a species, we would be so far advanced if wisdom was transferred and not knowledge.
Yes.
We would like the kind of gains we'd make for humanity, like the wisdom you'd have at 70 and 80-year-olds have. They can't they can't give it away, right? And it's anyway, so it's crazy.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's like, if everyone had self-governance, right? Like if everyone had the wisdom to self-govern, right? We wouldn't need machines of war. We wouldn't need, as many police, as much jails, as much, right? Like if people just self-governed, right? And had self-governance, that would make a huge difference in the planet. I guess that's always the human struggle, right? And I know a lot of people don't believe. My brother is a non-believer, and he thinks it's like ludicrous that I believe in God. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, yeah, I see God everywhere. You don't see him, right? Like, So I don't know, like for people like that.
Here's a question that I don't have an understanding on is, you're a constant caretaker. You're there, everything. What happens when you meet the maker? What happens when, he's 30 years or whatever, how long you got? I don't know, whatever it is. Because, I think you're 28. So you got a lot of years. But my point is at some point,
I'm not going to be able to do it. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there'll be options for him, right? There are options for him today. Many of his friends live in a place here locally that's called Champions Place, where the kids he's grown up with, playing ball with, and those kind of things, live there. Um, Independent of their parents. They call it independent living, but it's really not independent living. My what I always tell people is, the level of care that he's provided with us is this higher, right? Like, no one's going to give him that level of care. Now, hopefully his sisters, and I think they will step up, and he'll have some support from the state. We'll be leaving them something, so they'll have some support from us, and but yeah, hopefully, God keeps me around a long time. I want to be 80 years old, still carrying him around, and
Well, he like I guess from you come back to financial support, right? If he's an adult, whatever else, right? But when at some point he'll have to financially take care. Is that I mean, is there something outside of what? Let's say you guys have nothing or whatever else, like, right? What is someone who with cerebral palsy who has?
they're on Social Security disability, right? So he gets a very small amount of disability right now,
But who
but
would be afford to live the champion? Like, what do you do if you can't
yeah,
take care of yourself?
people who don't do that, there are homes, right? They're not, it's not a great situation for all people who have disabilities, who don't have family support, right? Finding a situation for them
Right.
is not easy, right? And society will absorb them, right? And hopefully, right, you're doing that in a way is great for them.
Well,
But
and that leads me where we're going with the kind of the awareness for World Cerebral Palsy Day, the Sunday is. What is that day is to bring light to to cerebral palsy itself, but it's also to help raise funds and money, because nothing goes on in the world without money. So you got to raise money and donate and do things to help. I would think on two sides, right, or three sides of it. It would be cures, things like preventative, if you will, say it that way. But then there's the living part of helping families and individuals who need this help. But then it's also when there's nothing left, like when they're like, because if things happen to you, like if you didn't have the financial support and he has this kind of secure, nice living life with you, like, he's living the full life as you describe, and all of a sudden you're gone and there's no one there, the shock to where he would probably end up would be devastating. And probably even worse, what people would do if he inherited your estate, the kind of money people would burn through. I don't know. Like, I think, I don't know the situation, but I sound like there's like potentially for a lot of families out there, dire straits that await.
yeah, a lot of challenges, and I think how people can really help. Right, more than anything, is people want to be included. Victor always wanted to be included. I'll give you a couple of examples of challenges or things that hurdles we had to overcome. So like when like an assignment, I mean, your children may have gone through this here because I know we're in the same school district. As freshmen, there was this exercise of design a cigar box on the outside with what people see you as on the outside, and then put things on this inside the cigar box that are like inside of you, like what those differences may potentially be. And I don't know if your kids had done that, but when Victor did it, my wife helped him do it. It was super powerful. So on the cigar box on the outside, she just had a handicap sticker on it, wheelchair sticker. It's what the world sees. On the inside, he had his Marine Corps marathon medals, his, little things he's gotten from playing baseball, school awards, just family trip pictures, and right. And so the world would see him as this handicapped person, but really he's living this, really full life on the inside. But like in the schools, and I think around the world, right, most of these kids that are going to school are just going into regular classrooms because the school system is not set up to have special needs separate from regular classrooms. And we were always believers of like, hey, keep him in regular classrooms. Right? We don't want him segregated. Right?
included.
Right. Well, like we don't go to special needs restaurants when we go out to eat as a family. We don't go to special needs church when we go to church, right? We go to church, we go to a restaurant, we go to, whatever we're doing, we're just doing it in society. Why in the school system are you segregating and keeping him away from
And
everyone?
this happens in autism. This happens in
Yeah, across the whole spectrum, right? And so, and not everyone, not all parents would take our approach, right? So many parents think it's best.
you should have a choice. I think what you're saying is you should have a choice to uh, allow for the same experiences, if possible, and not also disruptive to everyone else's experience, right? So if I think there's probably a balance between the two. Like, because you wouldn't have any child allowed to be disruptive for any reason in a class where it takes away from the other 30. At the same time, just because of some label or some kind of circumstances, you shouldn't be able to remove a child just because either. Just so, so I'm sure that's a delicate debate that is heavily debated amongst families.
Yeah, we had to arbitrate that, right? Like when Victor was going to school, right? I was like, they wanted him to go to a different school. And I was like, well, I want him to go to school where his siblings go to school. Like, why would he go to a different school? I mean, he's at the same dinner table as his siblings. Why is he not going?
Drives in the same car in the morning.
Like, why is he not going to school with his siblings? And and so it was hard, right? So I mean, those are some of the different challenges you face and decisions you got to make, and what are you going to take up and fight, and what are you not going to take up and fight, and hopefully, and the fortunate for us is that we stayed together. Many families don't stay together, right? And adds another level of complexity to that, right? And often it's the mom that's burdened with the special needs child while dad takes off, and so fortunately I have an intelligent, strong wife, and we were able to, and we don't always agree on things, right? Like there's a lot of technology support around special needs, and the school was always trying to use these different tech things, and some of them were pretty cool. Like an example, my wife being right was she wanted Victor to have a power chair that he can drive himself. Victor is legally blind. I'm thinking, how's he going to drive a power chair? But she's like, I think we can do it, and he can do it. And sure enough, she was right. He could do it, right? And so she got him a power chair, and he got switches, and he's able to drive around the neighborhood and go visit and talk to people. And I was like, just get him a new manual chair. But she was right about the power chair. But in many cases,
Seems like a good use case for autonomous driving too. A little help, a little assisted driving. Like, hey, you're about to hit a curb, corrects you.
Yeah, that was a great idea. That's probably not far away. Good point, Thomas. But I was always like a low tech person. Like people like, hey, why don't you get lifts put in your house and tracks? And I thought it's just as hard to. If I'm getting him in a lift, I can get him over my shoulder. Once I have him over my shoulder, I can pretty much take him anywhere, right? So like it's just easier.
Now,
so
crack out a back, and you're like, okay.
Till I'm 80, that's my goal. Right? Do it till I'm 80, like Jacqueline Lane.
So maybe as there's nothing we're selling here. We're just having a conversation to give awareness to, and learning how you've applied it. And it's been some of the lessons you just like outside of you've had other challenges in life. It makes it easier maybe to say that you can apply the right thinking to a situation because you've challenged more. And I think where a lot of people fall apart and your marriages stay together somehow. Half the marriages don't anyway, let alone with circumstances. I'd have to guess the marital rate in circumstances where when a child has special needs is probably pretty high on a split. I bet. I don't know. Yeah. That adds a level of pressure a lot of people aren't equipped to go do. But good for you on that. But how do people, once again, what's the best way for someone to help for families, for the individuals?
With special needs, I think it's really just accepting. People are so helpful. Like we've paid this forward a bunch too, but especially when the family was young and would go out for dinner, right? And an anonymous person would pick up her dinner, right? Or we would, stuff like that. That was always a very nice surprise and acknowledgement. But I think it's really just being engaged in the community and taking the time to get to know whether it's no matter what the special need is, right? Because the spirit is still inside of them. And I think if you can understand that there's a spirit inside of them, that they're reachable. And so I certainly donate money to the United Cerebral Palsy Association, right? There's different ways to donate and support, get involved, right? Local special needs organizations in Greater Atlanta focuses a leader of providing respite care and all sorts of other things for folks. But I think that what ends up being most important is community, right? And engagement and getting to know these kids Victor's an adult. He's turning 29 in a couple of weeks, but he's still my kid, right? So, but getting to know these people at a personal level, right? And don't be afraid of the difference. And I think that there's an example, a local example. You may know this person, but there's a person at a major local retailer right here that's got a facial deformity. And he's worked there for a long time. And when you first see it, it's kind of shocking.
Is that at Home Depot?
Yeah, Costco.
Yeah, no. So I see the guy's as nice as per human on the planet.
Nice first, but he's worked there for a long time.
But initially, you're taking back.
It's very unusual to look at, and it took me, even knowing, right? It took me a while to get comfortable, looking him in the eyes and engaging in conversation, and it's just like, just don't be taken back or afraid of the difference, right? And just help them be included, whether that's work opportunities, whatever you can do, right? Just trying
to saying hello with eye contact. Hey, how's your day going? Good, awesome. Like, I mean, sometimes because people avoid eye contact. I assure you, the person already knows you're looking and staring. They're not used to it, but they're aware. And just being at least human, polite, in any situation is it's meaningful. I'd say it that way. To most people. At least I'm guilty of it as well, where I'm like, you pull back sometimes, but it's only because you're uncomfortable in your own skin around, like, you don't know what to do. It's like ignorance, if you will, to how to behave. And here's the thing: just behave like a normal human would behave. If you normally pull back from humans, then pull back from humans. If you're normally friendly with somebody, be friendly with somebody.
Just be yourself. You've gotten the opportunity to meet Victor a few times. I mean, he's just fully engaged, right? We're going this weekend tomorrow up to North Georgia to a fried pickle festival. We've never been to one before, but it's a fried pickle festival.
Oh, where's that? Like, well, let's give a.
It's up in Dalton, Georgia. So we're headed up to Dalton Fairgrounds tomorrow. Okay. So it's 90 minutes away, but he loves fried pickles. And I said, well, they have a festival around fried pickles. Let's go check it out. Right. So we're headed up there and go get that experience tomorrow.
This has been very, I always love talking to you. It's always fun. I feel like you should have a podcast, but you have one, but we'll talk about that later. You used to have one.
It's a little bit different.
I think you have a new topic I think you could take. It's your step to becoming a preacher. We all know you're going that route. We know at some point you're going to
I don't know.
Game. It's happening. Not full monk, not full priest, but minister. It's happening. Minister. I can feel it.
Wasn't Reggie White the minister of destruction?
I don't remember. I don't know. Yeah, no, I have no idea.
He would sack the quarterback, and while he was on top of him, say, "God bless you."
God bless you for letting me tackle your face into the ground. It's great. Vince, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Thomas.
I'll be right back. Guys, thank you so much for listening, bringing attention to World Cerebral Palsy Day, October 6th. Vince is a beautiful human, and if you ever get him, if you just want to talk to somebody who's got some stuff figured out around life, family, business, I honestly, if you reach out to him, he will likely take your call and talk to you, because that's how he is. He's great. For everyone who's watching, listening, thank you so much for joining today. It's very nice to have Vince back on the show, and I really hope you get something from the show and learn something, how to deal with something in your life a little bit better, a little bit more in the idea that it's a gift and not a challenge. But until we meet again, please get out there, go unleash your entrepreneur, go cut a tie to something you believe in that is holding you back. Create new ideas, new relationships, new ways of thinking. Thank you so much for listening.